I came to this quiet town looking for peace, but the first woman who looked at me saw straight through me. She smiled, slow, tired, knowing, and said, "You're not safe here." I'm not either. I didn't understand what she meant then, but I stayed. And that's where everything began. I arrived in that coastal town on a morning that felt half awake. Fog lay thick over the harbor, curling around the boats like it was trying to hush them back to sleep. The air smelled of salt and wood and something old. I didn't know anyone. I didn't come with a plan beyond escape. I just needed somewhere quieter than the life I'd been stumbling through. Somewhere I could sit with myself without feeling like the world was watching. The cafe was the first building with lights on. Soft amber glow behind foggy windows. A bell that chimed when I pushed the door open. The kind of place that made you lower your voice without knowing why. I sat near the window so I could see the ocean, even if the ocean didn't want to be seen that day. That's when I noticed her. She moved like someone who had learned to conserve parts of herself. Graceful but careful. Her hair pulled loosely, not trying to impress anyone. A simple sweater, sleeves pushed to her elbows. There was something about the way she wiped the counter, slow, thoughtful, like she was keeping her mind busy on purpose. She noticed me before I noticed myself. When she approached, she didn't smile first. She watched, not in a suspicious way, more like she recognized a familiar kind of tired. Like she was measuring what kind of heartbreak I carried and whether it was the quiet kind or the kind that destroys rooms. "First time here?" she asked, voice low, warm, but edged with something restrained. "Yeah," I said. "Just got in this morning." She poured the coffee without asking how I took it. Somehow she got it right. When she placed the cup down, her hand brushed the table. Not mine, but close enough that I noticed how steady her fingers were. How practiced she seemed at hiding tremors. She looked at me again. Really looked. And something inside me stilled. Then she said it. But not like a threat. Not dramatic. Not even heavy. Just honest. Quiet. A truth she'd been holding too long. "You're not safe here." A pause. The faintest curve of her lips. Not quite a smile, more like resignation. "I'm not either." No explanation. No warning signs or dramatic music. Just a woman standing in front of me telling me a truth the way someone might mention rain is coming. Then, she walked away. Not hurried. Not emotional. Just as if this was a thing she said sometimes. As if danger was routine. I watched her tie her apron behind her back. I watched how she steadied her breath before speaking to the next customer. I watched how her eyes never fully relaxed, even when she laughed. Something inside me, the part that had run to this town, leaned forward instead of pulling back. I wasn't safe here. She wasn't either. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't want to run. I wanted to understand. I wanted to stay. It didn't take long before I realized something was different about that place. On the surface, it looked harmless. Quiet streets, weathered houses, flower pots on windowsills. The kind of town where the ocean was louder than the people. But quiet can hide a lot. Silence can hold a kind of pressure. The first sign was small. When I walked down the main street, a man smoking outside the hardware store stopped mid-inhale. He didn't say anything, he just watched me pass. Not curious. Not welcoming. Just watchful. Like he was trying to figure out where I fit. And whether I should. I tried to brush it off at first. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was just the outsider, the newcomer, the unfamiliar face. But the feeling followed me. Every time I turned a corner, I felt eyes. Even inside the cafe, there was something unspoken in the air. Regulars spoke softly with one another, but conversations thinned when I walked in. Not hostility exactly, just caution, as if change was something they didn't trust. But with her, the atmosphere shifted. She was different when we were alone in small, passing moments, softer, warmer, almost playful. Not in an obvious flirtatious way, but like she allowed herself to be human with me. When customers were around, she was composed, efficient, a quiet part of the room. But when I came up to the counter, sometimes her eyes lingered just a bit longer than necessary. Sometimes her voice lowered without meaning to. She began to ask questions. Gentle ones. Are you settling in? Finding your way around? Sleeping all right? Her concern wasn't nosy, it was careful. The kind of concern that comes from experience. And then there were the almost touches. When she placed my cup on the counter, her fingers brushed mine. Not accidental. Not intentional either. Just two people meeting in a shared space neither of them wanted to break too quickly. The warmth of her skin stayed with me longer than it should have. I didn't comment on it. Neither did she. One afternoon, I saw her outside wiping down the cafe tables. The wind played with her hair and she kept tucking the same strand behind her ear, over and over. There was a man across the street watching her. Leaning on his truck, eyes narrowed like he had a claim on something. She noticed him. Her shoulders tightened just slightly, but her face stayed calm. That was when I realized, whatever she meant when she said she wasn't safe, it was real. And it wasn't metaphorical. But the strange thing was, the more I saw the edges of her world, the more I felt drawn to her. Not out of pity, not out of fascination, but because she carried herself with dignity in a place that did not make that easy. The town watched her, and the town was starting to watch me. But the moments between us, the shared cups of coffee, the quiet observations of the tide, the faint smiles that felt like stolen secrets, they felt like something neither of us were ready to name, but neither of us wanted to let go of either. The danger wasn't obvious. It was slow, subtle, like a tide rising while you're not looking. And yet, I kept coming back. Closing time at the cafe always felt different from the rest of the day. When the door was locked and the last chair was turned upside down on a table, the air seemed to exhale. The constant background hum of conversation fell away. It was quiet, not the suspicious quiet of the town, but a gentle one, a quiet that felt earned. I had started staying later, offering to help her clean up. She pretended to protest the first few times, but she didn't mean it. There was something comforting about doing small tasks together. Sweeping the floor, wiping down the counter, flipping chairs. It felt like shared silence, the kind where two people don't need to fill the air with words to feel understood. That evening, outside, the sky was a deep red fading into indigo. The fishing boats were returning to the harbor one by one, engines humming like distant thunder. The windows of the cafe glowed with the kind of warmth you only see in places that are loved. Or maybe just endured. She poured tea from a small ceramic pot I hadn't seen her use before. "It's my own blend," she said, almost shyly, like she was giving me something personal. Steam curled between us. The scent was floral, soft jasmine, maybe lavender. Something calming. We sat by the window, watching the sky bruise into night. For a while, we didn't speak. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was thick with questions neither of us knew how to ask. Finally, I broke it. "What did you mean?" I asked quietly. "When you said I wasn't safe here, and that you weren't either." She didn't look surprised that I had asked. Maybe she had been waiting for the question. She didn't answer right away. She stared at her tea as though the truth was somewhere in the steam. "When you live in one place long enough," she began slowly, "people stop seeing you as a person. They decide who you are. Then they hold you to it. Forever." Her voice didn't shake, but something in her eyes did. "I tried to change my life," she continued. "I tried to leave what hurt me. Most people here think I should have stayed." She didn't say the word husband. She didn't need to. There was a heaviness under her words. Not dramatic, not seeking sympathy. Just a truth she had learned to carry alone. "The problem with small towns," she said, looking out toward the harbor, "is that nothing stays secret. Not pain, not mistakes, not freedom." She took a slow sip of tea. "And when someone new comes along," her eyes found mine, "they notice." There it was. Not a threat, not a warning, but a confession. She wasn't just telling me about the town. She was telling me about herself. About fear. About being watched. About surviving. I didn't tell her she was strong. I didn't tell her I'd protect her. Those would have been too easy, too hollow. I just nodded and placed my hand near hers on the table, not touching, just close enough that she could choose. After a moment, her fingers slid lightly toward mine, barely touching, just enough to say, Thank you for seeing me. And in that small, quiet closeness, something began. The storm came in fast, the way storms do near the sea. Not politely, not gradually, but all at once. One moment the sky was pale and scraped with thin clouds, and the next, heavy gray thunderheads were rolling in over the water. The cafe windows darkened. The air thickened. The wind picked up with a low howl that rattled the loose shutters along the street. I was already inside when the rain began. A sharp, slanting rain that moved sideways, driven by a wind that smelled like cold metal and salt. She hurried toward the door, looking outside, judging the weather. There were tables and chairs on the patio, enough to blow away if the storm got any worse. "Help me?" she asked, though it came out more like a breath than a question. We stepped outside together. The rain hit us immediately, cold, heavy, unrelenting. We grabbed the chairs, stacking them quickly, the storm pushing against us like it wanted to swallow the whole street. The wind whipped her hair out of its tie, strands flying across her face. She kept trying to tuck them back, frustrated, focused, determined. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe the wind, maybe the moment, maybe the way her hands were shaking from the cold. But when she reached to catch one more chair, I reached too. Our hands collided. Her fingers cold and small, mine warm from exertion. She froze, just for a heartbeat. Her head lifted, and she looked at me. Really looked, as though something inside her had just opened without her permission. Rain traced along her cheekbones, caught in her eyelashes. Her breath came unevenly, not from the work, but from something else. Something neither of us had named yet. We stood under the cafe awning, soaked, the rain roaring around us like a curtain closing us off from the rest of the world. She spoke first, but softly, like she was afraid the words themselves could break something delicate. "I shouldn't be this close to you." It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't coy. It was truth, raw and quietly terrified. The world between us felt impossibly thin in that moment, like a held breath, like an unwritten line. I didn't step away. Instead, I said, with too much honesty and not enough caution, "Then don't move." Something in her posture loosened, a surrender without collapse. Not giving in, but letting herself simply be near someone, maybe for the first time in a long time. The rain beat down. The wind howled, but the space between us softened. Her hand was still in mine, barely. Fingers resting, not gripping, like a question waiting for its answer. We didn't kiss. We didn't need to. The closeness was its own confession. It was the kind of moment two people remember long after it ends. Not because of what happened, but because of what almost did. Thunder cracked in the distance. She exhaled, slow, shaky, vulnerable. And for the first time, she didn't pull away. That night, the storm quieted to a steady rain, the kind that settles instead of rages. The cafe was closed early. The streets emptied. The town swallowed in a hush that felt almost protective. She stood at the foot of the staircase leading to the apartment above the cafe and paused. She looked at me as if weighing something: trust, risk, maybe hope. "Would you like some tea?" she asked. And it was such a simple invitation. No romantic pretense. No implied intentions. Just a quiet offering of a little more time. I followed her upstairs. Her apartment was small, warm, lived in a way that felt deeply human. Books stacked in gentle chaos. Plants that had been cared for. A worn couch with a blanket folded neatly at the edge. Soft light from a single lamp. A window open just enough to let the rain sound in. She moved differently here, unguarded in the smallest ways. The stiffness she carried in public loosened. She tucked her hair behind her ear absent-mindedly. Her shoulders sat lower. She didn't look over her shoulder the way she sometimes did downstairs. As the kettle heated, I noticed a framed photograph on a shelf. A younger her, smiling fully, brightly, next to a man. I didn't ask. I didn't have to. She set 2 cups on the table, her fingers gentle on the porcelain. Then she sat, folding one leg under her. She didn't speak right away. Not because she was hiding, but because she was deciding where to begin. "When I was 20, she started, voice quiet but steady. Everyone told me I was lucky to marry him. He was well-liked, kind to people when they were watching. The rain filled the silence her words left. At first, I thought the anger was stress, a bad day, a misunderstanding. Then it became the normal. I started shrinking to fit his moods. I forgot what it felt like to breathe without measuring at first. She wasn't crying. She wasn't breaking. She was telling the story of someone who survived themselves back into existence. When I finally left, she said, eyes resting on the tea instead of me. The town didn't understand. They told me to forgive him. They told me I was being dramatic, that I owed him another chance. I became a reminder they didn't want to look at. She laughed. A small, tired exhale. Not bitter, just worn. That's when I learned you can be lonely even in a place that knows your name. I didn't interrupt. I didn't offer solutions. I didn't try to reframe her pain into something inspirational or neat. I just listened fully with the kind of attention that tells someone their story matters. When the silence settled again, I reached out and placed my hand on hers. Slow. No urgency. No claim. Just steady warmth. Her breath caught. A tiny, unintentional sound. Not from sadness, but from being seen. She didn't pull away. Her fingers turned, gently, until her hand was resting in mine. Palm to palm. Like something she had forgotten how to ask for but had longed for anyway. Not passion. Not romance. Recognition. Two people sitting in the soft light of a rainy evening, holding not just hands, but truths, quietly, safely, together. The rain passed overnight, leaving the air washed clean and the sky painfully blue. The world looked softened, like something heavy had finally lifted, but what passed between us was still quiet, unnamed, something we both carried carefully. We didn't speak of the closeness in her apartment. We didn't define it. We didn't have to. Some things don't grow when you put a label on them too soon. But the town noticed. The next morning, when I stepped into the cafe, something in the room changed. Conversations dipped. A few heads turned. Nothing loud, nothing confrontational, just a shift in the air. The kind of silence that has teeth. I ordered like always. She made my coffee like always. But the space around us felt watched. She didn't look up at me as she worked. I could see the effort in that, the held breath, the careful posture. The town had eyes, and it used them. When I sat, a woman at a table near the window leaned toward her companion and whispered. Too close, too audible. It's starting again. I didn't know what that meant, not fully, but I felt it. Later, as we walked through the market street. Not together, not holding hands, just walking in the same direction. The attention sharpened. A group of older men fell quiet as we passed. Someone's gaze lingered too long. The air felt thick, expectant, judgmental. She kept her chin high, eyes forward, shoulders straight. But I saw her hand tremble, just barely, at her side. For a few steps I walked like that, beside her but not touching. And then I did something small, something polite, something that said everything. I offered her my arm. Not possessively, not boldly, just quietly. Here, if you want steadiness, it's yours. For a heartbeat, she hesitated, fear flickering at the edge of her expression. Not fear of me, fear of what it meant to be seen choosing someone again. Then slowly, she slipped her hand into the crook of my arm. Not gripping, just resting. The street didn't gasp. No one shouted. But something in the air tightened like a bowstring pulled just a little further back. We didn't speak until we reached the harbor, the wind moving across the water, pushing gentle ripples to shore. She let go of my arm only when she knew no one was watching. Her voice was soft, but not weak. They will talk. I know, I said. They will try to make me feel ashamed. I looked at her, really looked, at the years she had survived. At the strength she didn't brag about, at the softness she protected like a fragile flame. They don't decide who you are, I said. You do. Her eyes closed, not to shut me out, but to steady something breaking open inside her. When she opened them again, there was no fear left, only a quiet, steady warmth. We walked back together, not hiding, not explaining, not defiant, just honest. Whatever this was between us, it was no longer something we were pretending not to feel. Days passed, and something in the way we moved around each other shifted. Not in dramatic gestures or declarations, but in the softness of everyday things. The way she would look up when I entered the cafe, her eyes relaxing the moment she recognized me. The way I started wiping tables or sweeping the floor beside her without needing to be asked. The way our conversations found depth without force, like they had always been meant to go there. But the town didn't soften with us. Whispers continued. Looks lingered. Some people tried to be polite about it. Some didn't. It wasn't anger, it was judgment. A quiet kind, the kind that tightens around a person like a rope. The kind she had learned to adapt to, but not escape from. One evening, we walked along the shore. The tide was low and the sand was cool beneath our shoes. The sky was a watercolor of fading blues and pale rose. The world suspended in that small golden window between day and night. We didn't hold hands. We didn't need to. Our steps matched naturally. Our breaths synced without intention. She stopped near the water's edge, her hair catching in the ocean breeze. For a long moment, she didn't speak. I waited the way I had learned to. She took a slow breath. You could leave, she said. Not accusing, not fearful, just real. You don't have history here. You don't have roots. You don't owe this town anything. I understood what she was really saying. You don't owe me anything. If I stayed knowing the weight, the judgment, the eyes, the past that never truly went quiet. I watched the tide pull in and out, small waves brushing the shore, never quite giving up. I thought about the morning fog when I arrived, the quiet ache I carried, the way she looked at me like she knew that ache before I said a word, the countless silences we had filled together, not with distraction, but with presence. I turned toward her. I didn't come here to hide, I said gently. I came here to live differently, to feel differently, and I do, with you. Her eyes softened, but she didn't let the relief show all at once. She had learned to be careful with hope. She looked down almost shyly, the same woman who had once told me I wasn't safe here with that knowing half-smile. And now, she spoke in a whisper that felt like truth unfolding. I want you to stay, not as a plea, not as a promise, but as an offering. I stepped closer, slow, giving her time to move if she needed to. She didn't. My hand brushed hers, gentle, steady, open. Her fingers curled into mine, not tentative this time, but sure. The ocean roared quietly behind us. The town was somewhere beyond the dunes, unchanged, unrelenting. But here in this small space where truth lived, we chose. Not loudly, not rebelliously, not dramatically, just honestly. Two people who had carried loneliness for too long stood together as the sky darkened and decided to stay. If the story reached you, even a little, if it made you feel something you didn't expect, stay.